This is recorded fanfiction with What Hides in Plain Sight by not-just-a-fangirl. This story has been written for mature audiences. Enjoy! Natsu Dragneel did not freak out. He did, however, from time to time, perchance, become acutely aware of how much of a shit-disturbing cat he had, and said cat's ability to somehow break into the apartment across the hall from him. The one that a new tenant had just recently moved into, that Natsu had not yet met. He didn't really care about what other people thought about him. He didn't exactly socialize. But he figured that his cat tearing up all of their furniture, or getting into their fridge, would be a truly horrible way to meet someone. So had Natsu decided the only available option would be to break into their flat.
"Happy!"
Natsu hissed, dropping down to his hands and knees to look beneath the large cream sofa in the living room. His cheek was pressed firmly against the soft carpet as he craned his neck to look into the darkness that separated the furniture and the floor, glaring when all he saw was 2 pens and a handful of change. A slight rustle from the kitchen caught his attention, and Natsu jerked his head up, cracking it on the low wooden coffee table behind him. Natsu let out a low groan and tenderly rubbed the now sore spot by the crown of his head. The fridge door was open and blocking his view, but Natsu knew what Happy was searching for.
"Happy, you can't just break into someone's apartment and take their food,"
Natsu chastised as he walked around the sofa and short bookshelf that had rested against its back. When he finally got to the kitchen, Natsu crossed his arms and rolled his eyes at the cat's sad face. Looking over the contents of the fridge, Natsu let out a small chuckle and relaxed his stance.
"Of course she's not gonna have raw fish lying around, buddy."
Natsu sighed at Happy's watery eyes, bending down to scoop up the feline.
"I know you smelt it earlier, but maybe she ate it."
The cat shot him an aghast look before leaping from his arms and running down the hall, dashing into the girl's bedroom. Well, Natsu had assumed it was a girl from the vanilla scent that had already permeated the air in the apartment, not to mention the 10 pairs of boots and heels he had seen in the front entrance. Really, why did someone need that many different things to wear on their feet? This entire apartment confused him, if Natsu was honest. The furniture looked brand new and high-end, plush cream upholstery, and dark wooden accents on the matching reading chair to the sofa. A lush dark carpet designated the living room space, which also boasted an average-sized flat screen, or at least what Natsu would count as average for someone who could afford a flat screen. The off-white walls that were standard with the apartment flowed nicely with the look of the open floor space, while in Natsu's they were smudged and stood out from his mixed-match furniture. A small sandalwood table by the window had a tiny flower pot, freshly planted, and 2 chairs, though Natsu guessed that one was more for show than another person. Overall, the room looked like it had been ripped from one of those home design magazines, the glass and plastic cabinets and stone countertops of the standard kitchen included. How this person managed to make the exact same kitchen as Natsu's look classier than he could ever hope to was beyond him, though a part of him had to admit that it might be due to the clean stovetop and lack of dishes in the ceramic sink. But on the coffee table were newspapers with job requests circled, and the contents of the fridge looked more like a university student trying to eat healthy rather than a well-off adult. And then there were the bookshelves. There were 2 large ones on either side of the TV that reached to the ceiling and had to be at least 3 feet wide, stacked to the brim with books. The other was positioned against the back of the sofa, also filled completely, some even laying on top of the dark polished wood beside a small lamp. And all genres could be seen in the small library, Natsu's brain starting to hurt from trying to find the pattern. Were some of them even written in English? Natsu rubbed a hand over his face as he looked down the hallway to where Happy had ran, frowning as he heard more rustling. Did he even want to know what his cat was doing? Probably not, but his conscience told him he should look into it anyway. Natsu let out an angry noise as he threw his arms into the air. Why him? What had he ever done to deserve this? Breaking into a stranger's apartment was one, fairly easy thing, but entering a girl's room when she wasn't home was just creepy. Even Natsu had boundaries, though Happy would disagree. Walking cautiously down the hallway, it took Natsu a few moments to reach the white door, afternoon light shining through where the door was cracked open, just enough for an annoying cat to slip through. Breathing through his nose, Natsu pushed open the door and stepped into the smaller room. The first thing Natsu noticed was that he really liked whatever scent his new neighbor used. The second thing was that Happy was curled up on her bed and was currently getting blue fur all over the pink comforter and striped pillowcases. Natsu could only stand there and gawk as Happy purred sleepily and opened his eyes to look at Natsu.
What the hell?
Natsu grit through his teeth, looking around quickly as though any noise would bring this strange girl back to her apartment instantaneously. Happy yawned lazily before nuzzling into said girl's pillow, sighing happily.
Happy.
Natsu whined, knowing if he reached for the cat again, Happy would run away.
Happy, how would you feel if someone broke into your house and tried to eat your food and slept in your bed?
Happy snuggled in even more, not even bothering to look at Natsu as he spoke. I wouldn't mind if it was her. She smells nice, his high-pitched voice chimed, and Natsu couldn't help but agree that his new neighbor did smell nice. A small snigger from the bed drew Natsu's mind back to the offending feline. I meant she smells like a nice person, Natsu. Not that I like her scent, Happy teased, and Natsu felt heat crawl up his neck as he realized he must have made a sound of agreement in Happy's thought. He was about to make a lunge for the small blue annoyance when Happy's trill made him freeze. You like her. Natsu sputtered at the cat, who finally looked up at him, a smug grin pulling at his tiny mouth. Natsu rolled his eyes and dropped his outstretched arms, looking anywhere but at Happy. Glaring at the cat after inspecting yet another bookcase. Really, how many books could one girl own? Natsu opened his mouth to retort the ridiculous idea that he liked the pleasant-smelling stranger whose apartment he had broken into when he heard the sound of a key in a lock. Whirling around, Natsu's eyes widened as he looked through the open bedroom door and realized the owner was home. And he was in her room, with his talking blue cat curled up on her bed. With no escape as they were on the 10th floor and Happy seemed quite content to stay where he was. Natsu Dragneel began to freak out. A soft feminine voice floated from the living room, and Natsu would have found the sound soothing if not for the fact that he was about to die in 0.2 seconds. His body finally seemed to break free from whatever fear-induced trance it had been stuck in, and Natsu lunged at Happy. Miraculously, Happy was distracted enough by the look of horror on Natsu's face that he couldn't escape from Natsu's strong hands, one placed firmly over the loud feline's mouth. Natsu bolted from the bedroom, looking frantically around the hallway, trying to find another door to run into, or at least appear to be coming from. Claws sunk into his chest, and Natsu hissed, deciding that the door to the left and across the hall from the girl's bedroom would do. It was the spare in his apartment, so hopefully it would be here too.
Levy, I swear, I'm fine.
He heard the voice say, exasperation clear in her tone. Great. She was in a bad mood. Exactly what Natsu needed when he had to try to explain that no, she did not need to call the cops. Or kill him. Natsu really hoped that Happy's nose was right and she was a nice person. Seeing a pale hand wave itself from around the corner, Natsu slipped as quietly as he could into the chosen room. Standing outside of her open bedroom door was definitely not how he wanted to be found. Well, he didn't even want to be in her house in the first place, but details. Leaning his back against the door, Natsu let out the breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding in. Looking around, Natsu could have groaned as he saw that this was not the spare room, but more of an office. A very disheveled office. Partially unpacked boxes were stacked in a corner, and more bookshelves could be seen covering the wall to the left of Natsu, though they were only partially filled. Small trinkets were littered between empty spaces and books, Natsu having to fight his curiosity to go explore. He could examine them better after she had invited him over. Whoa, where had that thought come from? Natsu didn't even know this girl and he was already planning to snoop into her house and try to weasel his way into her life? If he hadn't felt creepy before, he sure as hell did now. Happy brought him back from his thoughts by digging his claws into Natsu's bare forearm, this time glaring up at the man. Natsu returned the glare with equal force, holding the cat's gaze until Happy looked away with a small huff. Looking around the room once more, Natsu took in the obviously worn reading chair, tucked into the back right-hand corner, the red fabric matted down and worn around the armrest and seat. The warmed love feel Natsu received from the chair transferred to the large oak desk in the center of the room as well. Natsu wasn't quite sure how the desk had gotten into the room, as it looked much too big to have fit through the door. Walking over to look at it closer, Natsu had to have had guessed that it was about the same age as the chair, not that he could easily tell its shape from its top. Papers were scattered all around the dark wood, some with handwritten notes scrawled neatly, others with almost illegible words, crossed out or circled. Pens were held in a cracked pink coffee mug next to the only clear space on the desk, roughly the size of a laptop. Natsu gently lowered a hand and brushed the paper tips with his fingers. Whoever this person was, she poured her soul into these pages. Natsu could still feel the remnants of her frustration and joy and passion in these papers. Transferring emotions to inanimate objects that intensely was impressive, especially as it had been hours, maybe even days, since she had scrawled these words. So enthralled by these lingering feelings was Natsu that he didn't even notice the light footsteps coming closer to his hiding spot. Happy could hear quite well, but he was looking forward to seeing Natsu get in trouble far too much to warn his human. Natsu now stood behind the desk, his legs having pushed back the black office chair out of his way. He had never been one for reading more than he had to, but some of these plot points intrigued Natsu. A mage that could turn into a dragon if his power went unchecked? Now that was a book Natsu would read. And no way! He was a demon too? Natsu admired the creativity of his neighbor. He certainly never would have thought of that. A small slip of paper with question marks caught his attention, and he was about to move the several papers that covered it out of its way when he heard the sound of the door in front of him open. Panic and disbelief raced through Natsu, as all he could do was stand frozen, hand on her desk, and blue cat trapped in his hold. He had forgotten she was home.
This has been the end of Chapter 1.